You're listening to the Confident Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Gavin, former professional photographer turned professional encourager. I'm an intuitive life and business mentor focused on strengthening courage and confidence for heart-centered creatives. These heart-centered creatives desire to make an impact and an income through sharing their heart with the world. This podcast is dedicated to helping us creatives activate more courage within ourselves so we can experience more memories, achieve more milestones, and make more money. In addition to empowering stories, this show will also include practical, actionable strategies from thought leaders, influencers, impact makers, and my own personal experience. If you are passionate about the areas of intentionally living, prioritizing passion, choosing courage, as well as some soulful business strategy, spirituality, and some self-mastery, you, my friend, are in the right place. You ready to play? Hey, friends. Another intermission for you. Supplement for the soul coming at ya. And this one is one that I'm actually going to be expanding a lot more episodes into a little bit more of the training and teaching. But this one is where it all starts for me. And if you know anything about me or you've just discovered me, you will quickly realize I am fascinated by all things human behavior, human psychology, the way the brain works, the way our energy works. You know, I'm often saying with my clients that my magic is really combining the science of the brain with the intuition of the heart in order to help you access the things that you desire most in your life, right? So I'm super passionate about helping people create more memories, more milestones, and more money. And the reason why I'm so passionate is because in my experience, I have watched the way that people engage with their life and their business. And what has always struck me the most is the way in which we see the world, meaning the lens in which we view everything, is ultimately what gives us every result in our life. So if we reverse engineer that, the reason that we're getting the certain results that we have in our life is because we have certain thoughts that are driving certain behaviors that ultimately give us certain actions that give us the results, right? That's sort of the formula. But what's so fascinating to me, my degree is in psychology, and I was so fascinated at the way that we could study how the human brain works, but yet there were so many unpredictable factors where environment or social upbringing or society or any of those things could still have a lasting effect on someone. So for me, recognizing the way that our subconscious programming is installed as a child, as a kid, usually before the age of 7, we have all of these sort of quote unquote rules about life that we adopt. We're just like little sponges in the world. And we take on what our parents tell us, what our grandparents tell us, what our family, extended family, society, our culture, our community. We just take it all in, and we don't really have the reasoning. We don't have the ability to say, I don't know if that's true for me. I don't know if I agree with that. We just accept it as a truth, and that becomes our lens of the world. Now, it's not until way later in our life when we start to question some of the experiences we're having and the results that we're getting that maybe we start to unpack that, like, oh, that belief may not be the best thing for me, or maybe I actually changed my mind, or maybe I was doing something because I thought somebody else wanted me to do it, right? So this is why I'm super passionate about doing the identity work, the shifts in who we think we are in the world, and really shifting what we actually want to experience on a conscious level so that that becomes the subconscious programming. And I know that it feels a little bit confusing and it feels a little bit like, what are you even talking about? And I don't even know what that is. And that's totally fine. It's okay. I just want to start to get this curiosity going where we can start to look at, why are we getting certain results in our life? Why are we getting, we're not making the money that we want, or we're not going to the health levels that we want to be at, or we're not, connecting the way that we want to. And here's what I want you to know about that. First of all, it's not your fault, right? First of all, a lot of self-compassion and a lot of self-acceptance will go a long way here. But what I want you to start to play with is what ideas in your head are things that you know your parents or your family might subscribe to as well. Sometimes this plays out as working hard is the only way that you can make money. Or if you have a lot of money, you're not a good person, right? Money is a really big trigger for a lot of people. But sometimes it's, you don't speak up, and you don't speak up for yourself when you have a different opinion, whether it's in work or in relationships, because you've been conditioned that you just don't do that. Good girls don't do that, right? Or maybe it's that you have to be perfect. And unless you're going to get the thing right, unless it's going to be perfect, you're not going to do it, right? So there are all kinds of ways that these things play out. And P.S., it's ongoing. It's new levels and new experiences, which trigger new ideas of how we're viewing the world, right? So for me, in my photography business, I had a really good edge where I could recognize if I use certain lenses in my photography, I would get a different result, right? So if I put a zoom lens on, I could stand across the beach and zoom into the water. I didn't have to walk there. I just zoomed the camera lens and it allowed me to take a photo that was up close on the waves crashing. Now, if I use a prime lens, that's a lens that's fixed. It does not zoom. So if I wanted to go get a picture of the ocean, I had to literally walk over and take a picture from the distance that I wanted it to be at. Now, why does this matter? Because when I recognized that I could change a lens and get a different result, I immediately applied that same philosophy to my thinking. So when I started to think about my photography business, I started looking around when I first started, and I was just doing what everybody else was doing. I was looking at what other people were charging, and I was doing what they were doing, and I was taking photos of everything that everybody else was doing because that's what I thought you did. You just did what everybody else does. But if you know anything about me, or if you're just coming into my world, you will quickly learn I identify as what I call a heart-centered rebel. And a heart-centered rebel is someone that really operates from a place of love and compassion and really being considerate, but rebels against the societal norms, let's say, right? So I quickly realized I didn't fit in this box. This didn't feel good to me. I was saying yes to things that didn't really light me up. I was taking on clients that weren't a fit for me. And I really came back to the idea where I wasn't doing things that were aligned for me. So I really had to change it up. And what I identified about this was I needed to change my lens. I needed to do something that was more in line for me. So what I started to do was ask myself the questions of what kind of business do I want? What kind of clients do I want? What kind of photography do I want to do? How do I want to make my money? What is it? Do I want to do stock photography? Do I want to do licensing photography? Do I want to meet with people every day? And for me, it's always about connection and memories. And so I really wanted to connect with my clients, but I wanted to give them such an amazing experience, right? Experience and client care is one of my most favorite things of my business, in both businesses, really. But I want to share this with you because up until then in my life, I was going against the grain, and it felt really uncomfortable because most everybody else in my life had said, you go to school, you get a job, you stay at that job forever, and then you have kids and get married, or you get married and have kids, and you check off all the boxes. But when I wanted to leave teaching because it was quote unquote safe to a lot of people, they could not understand how I was going to be a photographer. It took me so long to even say the words, I am a photographer. Identifying as a photographer felt so scary to me because I felt like people didn't understand it, and I felt like I wasn't sure if I would get their approval, and it felt really out of my comfort zone. But the more I started to realize and connect to my own heart and really lead with what felt good for me, I realized I was navigating my own path. I was going my own way, and I was finding the people that needed me. So I really identified with being a heart-centered rebel in creating a business that really felt aligned for me and felt really good for me. But I had to do so much work around what was going on in the sort of mental software of my brain, right? My subconscious was telling me all these reasons why this wasn't a good idea. But I had to do all this work and really change the psychology that was running in the background all the time about what was possible. And that's really what I want you to start to consider. Like, start to play with these ideas that, like, maybe the beliefs that you have about the way the world is need an upgrade. Maybe what you're experiencing in frustration or confusion is because the beliefs that you've been holding most of your life actually need to pivot and shift. So the way I like to think about it is sort of like putting on a different pair of glasses, right? If I've been wearing a certain color glasses, like I've been wearing blue sunglasses for most of my life, well, I just see everything as blue. And I actually assume that everybody else does too. But when someone comes up to me and says, hey, why don't you try on these pink sunglasses? It changes the landscape of everything, right? And so here's what I want you to consider. Upgrading your psychology, upgrading your mental software, it has the potential to change everything for you. And when we do that, we get to be more in alignment with our heart, and we get to say, maybe these were my parents' glasses, but now I get to put on my own. So I want you to start to play with the idea, like maybe if you're feeling this sort of discord or some sort of disconnect in your life, it might be because there's something there that you've outgrown. You might have learned the lesson or got the memory, but now it's time to change it. So if we don't change what's going on within us, within our brain, within our mental programming, there's no way that we can outwork that, right? There's this illusion that if we just hustle, we'll get to the desired result. And here's what I really want you to play with. I've said that like 1,500 times, but I swear all of this is connected. But here's why. Yes, you might get results from hustling, and that might give you some sort of edge, but it's not sustainable long term. And it's important to come back to your heart and really ask yourself the question of, like, what kind of life do you want to live? And is it in alignment for you, not your parents, not your society, not your, neighbors down the street? Who are you getting advice from? And are they living the life that you actually desire, right? Because most people are coming from a place of love, but they actually don't want us to change. It's because they are afraid of change too, and they don't want us to leave them behind. So everything starts with what's going on between our ears. And if we don't actually have a look at what we're believing about the world, it's really hard to reach our goals and get into this place of growth and expansion if we don't start questioning what's been the habit and routine and patterns throughout our life up until now. So if you have any questions about this, please come over into the community. This is what I love to talk about, the way that our human behavior, our psychology interacts with the universal principles of the world. And those things are laws. It doesn't change no matter what your beliefs are. And if we don't actually understand them, then it's really difficult for us to win, right? So come on over to the community. Let me know how this lands on your heart. I hope this supplement for the soul really gets to your heart, because this is a big one. This is where it all starts. So listen to this a couple times, see what comes up for you, and come on over to the community and let's keep it going. Have a beautiful day. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Confident Creative podcast. I am so psyched that I got to have this conversation, and I loved sharing it with you. If you enjoyed it, I would love for you to hit subscribe to the podcast, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you could go ahead and leave a review about what your biggest takeaway was. If you want to come over and continue the conversation, join us in my free Facebook community, the Confident Creative Collective. We'll be diving into all different conversations from the podcast, as well as some additional trainings and some inside scoop. If you want to find me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram at Keri.Gavin, Keri.Gavin, or you can find me on Facebook. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you, and thank you for sharing this with anyone you think it resonates with. See you on the next episode.